In our headlines on this Thursday, January 2nd, here in South Korea. Authorities have until next Monday, that is January 6th, to execute the arrest warrant issued for President Yoon Suk-yeol following his snubbing of 3 consecutive summons earlier served to him for questioning by investigators. And in response to the tragic plane crash at Muan International Airport this past weekend, a search and seizure warrant has been executed at the airport itself, as well as its branch of the Regional Aviation Office and the Seoul office of Jeju Airline. Meanwhile, the government has shared its economic policy for the new year, and priority has been placed on seeking stability amid a host of internal and external risk factors, including substantial tariffs pledged by the incoming Trump administration. The Constitutional Court is holding its second pre-trial hearing tomorrow, that is Friday. And this upcoming event will take place in the presence of 8 justices, given the recent filling of 2 of the 3 vacancies. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial proceedings will continue with the second preparation hearing taking place this Friday. Judges will once again attempt to lay out the main grounds for his impeachment and a working list of evidence and witnesses each side would like to present throughout the trial. At the first hearing last Friday, the National Assembly's impeachment panel set out 4 to 5 grounds in their move to remove Yoon from office. It applied for 15 witnesses, including key figures under investigation suspected of being involved in the martial law order, such as former Defense Minister Kim Yong-yeon. Yoon's team, however, had not submitted any materials. But his lawyers seemed to contest the grounds for impeachment, saying they were based on media reports, as well as the court's method of delivering official papers to notify Yoon of the trial. The president had refused to accept the delivery at his residence and office in central Seoul. Thus, amid concerns that Yoon's legal team will employ delaying tactics to prolong the trial, it remains to be seen how cooperative the team will be in the preparatory hearing.
Still, Yoon's trial is expected to pick up pace as the Constitutional Court now has 8 justices, 1 short of a full panel, but still the same number as when former President Park Geun-hye was impeached in 2017.
The initial panel would have needed to vote unanimously for impeachment, as at least 6 justices need to uphold the ruling under the 2/3 majority rule. The court held an inauguration ceremony for the 2 new justices, Cho Han-chang and Chung Kye-sun, on Thursday. Beginning his tenure, Justice Cho vowed to always reflect on what it means to ensure the dignity and value of humanity, and how the protection of basic rights through the rule of law should be realized in defending liberal democratic order. Justice Chung said she would strive to be a reliable member of the court that earns the trust of the people. Their 6-year terms will end on the last day of December 2030. Now, with 1 judicial vacancy, the court said Thursday that it continues to call for a swift appointment to complete its panel. Acting President Choi Sang-mok has said he will fill the remaining seat after bipartisan agreement is reached in Parliament. Also, with investigative authorities closing in to detain Yoon for questioning on insurrection charges, the Constitutional Court says it will conduct a procedural review of the case, including the President's request for the court's adjudication and an injunction to challenge the arrest warrant. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And authorities have until January 6 to execute an arrest warrant issued for President Yoon Suk-yeol, and there is talk about a possible execution today. Our correspondent Lee Si-hoo has the latest.
The Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials may execute a warrant to detain suspended President Yoon as early as Thursday. That's 3 days after a court issued arrest and search warrants against the president over his botched attempt to impose martial law on December 3rd. The CIO, which sought the warrant after Yoon defied 3 summons for questioning, has since been discussing the specifics of the arrest with the police. The arrest warrant is valid until Monday, January 6th, and the head of the anti-corruption agency vowed that it would execute the warrant within its validity dates. But Yoon's legal team is arguing that the warrant is unlawful and invalid. Yoon's supporters are also protesting the warrant, holding rallies outside his residence in Yongsan-gu district in central Seoul. Meanwhile, Yoon himself sent out letters to his supporters on Wednesday, thanking them for their efforts to preserve the democratic constitutional order. He also vowed that he will fight until the end to protect South Korea alongside them. The Presidential Security Service, which remains on duty, has said there will be security measures on its side according to due process, hinting that it could block the CIO from entering Yoon's residence and executing the warrant. The CIO warned there may be penalties for such attempts to block Yoon's arrest.
We see setting up barricades, locking up iron gates, and not complying with the execution of arrest as obstruction of public duty.
The office plans to arrest Yoon, question him at its headquarters in Gwacheon, Gyeonggi-do Province, and then detain him at the Seoul Detention Center for up to 48 hours after the arrest according to the law. To keep Yoon in further detention, an additional warrant must be issued. This while the main opposition Democratic Party continues to urge the CIO to promptly carry out the arrest and for the Presidential Security Service to comply with the process. This is the first arrest warrant for an incumbent president in South Korea's history. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, officials have launched an investigation into Sunday's tragic plane crash at Muan International Airport, with a search and seizure warrant in execution starting today. Kim Do-yeon has more.
Police on Thursday morning executed a search and seizure warrant for their investigation into the Jeju Airline crash. 3 locations are listed on the warrant: offices at Muan International Airport, the Muan branch office of the Busan Regional Office of Aviation, and the Seoul office of Jeju Air. The charge indicated on the warrant is death and injury by occupational negligence, but a specific alleged suspect is yet to be named. Until now, police invested time in identifying the remains of the victims, but all 179 have now been identified. Now the investigation team is steering towards finding the reasons behind the tragedy, including aircraft operations and maintenance. At the same time, the government's Aviation and Railway Accident Investigation Board and experts from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board and Boeing have opened an office at Muan International Airport to investigate the crash as well. According to the Transportation Ministry, the conversion of recorded data from the aircraft's cockpit voice recorder into audio format has been finished, which is earlier than expected, and the data will be transferred to the U.S. to be looked at. The ministry assured that investigation results will be transparent.
Additionally, there are concerns that the investigation might yield biased results since it is being conducted in the United States. However, as I mentioned yesterday, investigators from South Korea's Accident Investigation Committee will be participating in the investigation as well.
Earlier in the day, Acting President and Deputy Prime Minister Choi Sang-mo also addressed the crash issues. Apart from further safety checks across the nation for aircraft and airport operations, he addressed concerns over protecting the victims and their families.
According to media reports, indiscriminate posts, malicious comments, false and manipulated information, and provocative videos about the victims and their families are being shared on social media. We earnestly ask everyone to refrain from actions that cause pain to the bereaved families and other well-meaning individuals involved.
He called on law enforcement authorities to monitor the situation and that there will be legal repercussions for those who commit such malicious actions. As for honoring the victims, the first burial of a victim was held early Thursday morning, with more victims leaving for their resting places throughout the day. So far, a total of 30 of the victims have been transferred to their families. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The government has unveiled its economic framework for this year, with priority placed on seeking stability amid a host of uncertainties at home and abroad. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin reports.
Stabilizing the economy amid external and internal uncertainties. This is the overarching theme of the government's economic policy plans for this year. With South Korea currently going through a turbulent political period domestically, it comes as no surprise that the government is anticipating that people's livelihoods will continue facing difficulties as downside risks to the economy grow. And external risks that the government is monitoring include the implementation of tariffs that may target South Korea's exports with the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump. While domestic demand, which the state-run Korea Development Bank think tank has assessed as weak for more than a year, is expected to see improvement, export growth is expected to slow. With this assessment, the government is projecting the economy to grow only 1.8% in 2025, compared to 2.1% growth in 2024. As such, its policies are focused on 4 key areas: revitalizing people's livelihoods, managing external credibility, responding to trade uncertainties, and strengthening industrial competitiveness.
The growth rate is expected to decline to around 1.8%, exacerbating challenges for livelihoods and raising concerns about external creditworthiness. As such, the government has drafted the 2025 economic policy plan with the goal of stabilizing the economy.
To improve livelihoods, the government will allocate 70% of 85 trillion won, or nearly $60 billion, and the largest ever amount allocated in the first half of the year, to fund various projects that include helping young adults who are seeking employment and lowering grocery prices. The government is also focusing on maintaining external credibility by providing more than $130 million in cash subsidies in the first half of the year to encourage foreign investment. As for measures to combat trade uncertainties, the government is planning to hold meetings with both the economic and foreign affairs ministers and will provide various tax benefits for SMEs. The government will also support the enactment of the Special Semiconductor Act and set up a national AI computing center as part of its efforts to make Korea one of the top 3 leading countries in the global AI industry in order to maintain industrial competitiveness. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, the U.S. is reeling in the aftermath of an appalling attack in the city of New Orleans that has killed 15 people and injured dozens of others, just 3 hours after the country ushered in the new year. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
Bourbon Street, located at the heart of the French Quarters in New Orleans, was particularly crowded due to New Year's celebrations and college football's Sugar Bowl between the University of Notre Dame and the University of Georgia, set to take place later Wednesday evening. However, the scene quickly turned into chaos when a driver drove a truck up the street, crashing into pedestrians, killing at least 15 people and leaving dozens more injured. The suspect, who was shot by police officers, was found to have an ISIS flag in the vehicle at the time of the attack. Calling it an act of terrorism, the FBI says it's investigating potential links with terrorist organizations. The FBI also said the driver may not have been solely responsible for the attack, as improvised explosive devices were found in the vehicle as well. IEDs were also discovered on Bourbon Street, with video footage showing 3 men and a woman who may have been involved in placing the devices. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump took to his social media platform Truth Social on Wednesday to blame illegal immigrants for the attack before the suspect was identified by authorities as 42-year-old Shamsud Din-Jabbar, an Army veteran and U.S. citizen from Texas. The annual football game was postponed for safety reasons. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the government here has strongly condemned the shocking assault in New Orleans in the wee hours of Wednesday. That was New Year's Day. In a statement earlier on this Thursday, the Foreign Ministry shared its shock over the horrific event that targeted innocent people. It also conveyed the country's condolences to the grieving family members and friends of the victims. On the medical front, researchers here are making innovative use of a genetic scissor strategy for early diagnosis of lung cancer. Our Cha Yoon-kyung explains.
It is important to detect lung cancer in its early stages, since it is a top killer that can cause death without initial symptoms. To detect cancer, liquid biopsies using blood or urine are used nowadays rather than taking a biopsy from the cancer tissue. However, a liquid biopsy is limited in certain medical testing as there may be too little of the oncogenes within the sample. The research team developed a technology to detect lung cancer in its early stages with just traces of blood. Genetic scissors identify small amounts of lung cancer genes released by oncogene and separate them. Following amplification, the cancer genes are precisely identified. The whole process is similar to the standard PCR detection method, which also detects genes after amplification, but the genetic scissors technique more efficiently amplifies the genes.
The current PCR method amplifies genes by using the temperature difference, which causes uneven results. However, we planned this new technology to amplify genes quickly without a temperature change.
The newly developed method makes it possible to test 16 patient samples in only 40 minutes by detecting small amounts of oncogenes, up to 1,000 times less than that is needed for the standard PCR method. The team is planning on commercializing the method by developing a miniaturized portable diagnostic instrument in collaboration with local biopharms. Cha Yong-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Pope Francis has once again called for people to reject abortion. The message was delivered during the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City on New Year's Day. The Pope appealed for a firm commitment to protecting and respecting life from conception to natural death. The pontiff also highlighted the need to safeguard the lives of unborn and young children and those dying in isolation, emphasizing the importance of protecting all precious lives. He firmly stressed that human dignity must always be respected, adding a message of hope and encouragement for everyone to cherish their lives and look to the future with optimism. While Pope Francis is widely regarded as one of the most progressive and reformist pontiffs in history, he continues to hold a conservative stance on the issue of abortion. The supply of Russian natural gas to Europe via pipelines crossing Ukrainian territory was halted on New Year's Day. Ukraine's Energy Minister Herman Halushenko announced the decision, saying that the move would result in financial losses for Russia and a loss of market access. This came as Ukraine chose not to renew the 5-year agreement with Russia's state-owned energy company, Gazprom, for the use of the Urengoy pipeline. The decision directly impacts gas supplies to several European states, including the Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, and Moldova. Notably, Hungary and Slovakia, which have pro-Russian leanings, expressed strong opposition to the move. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico warned on social media that this gas cutoff would have dramatic consequences, not just for the Russian Federation, but for all EU nations. Now to Montenegro, where 10 people, including 2 children, were shot dead on New Year's Day in a village near Cetinje in the southwest of the country. According to reports, the 45-year-old suspect, who is still at large, retrieved a firearm from his home following a dispute at a bar. The gunman then killed members of his own family, the bar owner, and the bar owner's family at a separate location. Following the attack, the suspect fled the scene armed, prompting police to deploy special forces to track him down. Authorities revealed that the suspect had a history of being detained for illegal possession of firearms. In Germany and Italy, people celebrated the arrival of 2025 with unique traditions like frigid water swimming and dives. In Berlin, brave swimmers marked the new year with their annual ice bath tradition. Members of the Berlin Seals Club swam and danced in the icy waters, where the morning water temperature was 6 degrees Celsius and the air temperature was 4 degrees. Meanwhile, in the Italian capital Rome, 3 men dove off the 18-meter-high Cavour Bridge into the Tiber River, a tradition dating back to 1946. The Netherlands also has a similar tradition of diving into the icy North Sea to welcome the new year. However, this year's event was cancelled due to strong winds. 윤세영, Arirang News.
On the first workday of the new year, this morning started at below zero. Seoul was as cold as -2.8, but with cold winds. The feels-like temperature was -6 degrees Celsius. These cold winds will gradually become stronger and freeze Seoul at -5 degrees tomorrow morning. As the cold winds are moving towards the south, temperatures will drop across the country tomorrow. In clear weather, East Coast areas are under dry weather warnings. Since the atmosphere in the Seoul metropolitan area in Gyeongsangdo provinces is drying up, please be careful not to cause any fire-related accidents. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at -10 degrees, Daejeon and Gyeongju -4. Highs will move up to 2 degrees in Seoul, Busan 6 degrees. Between Sunday and next Monday, rain or snow is forecast in the central and western parts of the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. We wish you a Happy New Year.
저는 제 꿈을 찾고 싶습니다. 2025년 지금까지 꿈이 없이 살아오다 보니까 뭘 해야 할지 잘 모르겠을 것 같더라고요. 그래서 2025년에는 꿈을 찾는 게 제 소망입니다.
저는 이번 연도는 좀 많이 놀았던 것 같아서 내년에는 좀 열심히 공부를 해보지 않을까.
I wish that my friends and family are healthy and that I can finally get a job for 2025. Yeah.
저희 딸이 둘이 있는데 딸 둘이 행복했으면 좋겠고 건강했으면 좋겠고요. 그리고 저희가 전 회사원인데 회사가 좀 안정되게 잘 됐으면 좋겠고 그리고 나라가 빨리 시국이 안정이 됐으면 좋겠습니다.
시국이 시국인지라 연말이 좀 그렇게 즐겁게 보내기 좀 어려운 시국이긴 한데 내년에는 좀 더 밝고 좀 더 사회가 전반적으로 좀 안정된 사회였으면 좀 더 좋지 않을까라는 생각을 합니다.
정치적으로나 경제적으로는 좀 많이 안정이 되고 또 사실 자영업자 하는 사람들이 그 은행에서 대출을 받아가지고 사업을 하는 사람들이 많거든요. 사실 저희가 제일 바라는 건 좀 대출 금리가 많이 좀 낮춰져서 자영업하는 사람들이 좀 이렇게 편안하고 좀 안정된 사업을 운영하는 게 사실 저희 목표입니다.
새 소망이야 부모 입장에서는 자식들 자녀들 건강하고 그게 소망이고 무엇인지 잘 풀리게 내가 나에 대해서 맘 풀리는 부분도 풀리고 그런 부분이 좋죠.
I think to stay happy and healthy with our family and continue traveling and seeing different parts of the world.
I would like my family and my friends to be super happy, healthy, and also to have very special moments throughout the year.
I'm just looking forward to bringing the world closer together. I think there's just a lot of different perspectives and so forth, and I think as a human kind, we should be coming together closer, and that's my biggest hope for 2025.
노인은 큰 소망이 없고 내년에도 지금처럼 친구들이랑 별마당에 올 수 있으면 좋겠어요.
가족들과 더 놀러도 많이 가고 더 행복하고 더 좋은 삶을 살고 싶어요.
Right then, keeping in mind what our little friend has just said, may the new year bring you much love and laughter with family and friends. Thank you for watching.
curious about Korea?
And especially K-food? How familiar are you with Korean food? The sea on 3 sides, a mountainous terrain, and 4 distinct seasons. Thanks to these conditions, Korean cuisine bursts with diverse and unique flavors.
Do you prefer sweet or spicy?
A meat lover or a seafood connoisseur?
Can't decide?
There's got to be something here that you like.
For Koreans, rice is foundational. It's a staple and the centerpiece to all meals in Korea. There's bibimbap, rice mixed with vegetables, gukbap, rice in hot soup, and kimbap is the demand around the world.
For me, it's noodles over rice. Korea has amazing noodle dishes. Chuy ramen and cold naengmyeon to blow away the heat. A meat lover here. Pork, beef, chicken. I like them all. Did you know that bulgogi is listed in the English dictionary? There's also the famous chimek, chicken and beer, which is the best combo for a night out with friends.
Surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, Korea has a great selection of seafood, from raw fish to piping hot seafood soups. It's mouth-watering just talking about it. The 2 pillars of Korean condiments, gochujang and soy sauce.
Ooh, what do you prefer?
Gochujang. I like anything made with gochujang. In general, Koreans love spicy food.
I prefer the soy sauce base. There's something about the salty and sweet that hits the right spot. I think even those who are trying Korean food for the first time will really like it.
But that's not all.
We can't leave out the street food. If you're in Korea, it's a must-try. They are both treats for your eyes and mouth.
How about it? Mouth-watering, right?
Korean food, you've got to try it. Discover a whole new world of flavors.
Step into a world where culture speaks beyond words, bridging hearts and minds. Hello, this is your DJ Soojung for Culture Crunch. Crunch on a new flavour of K-culture with me every day.
우리는 시끌벅적한 여행을 계획했다. 여럿이 몰려다니며 남들이 가는 데 다 가보고 남들이 하는 거 다 해보는 그런 여행 말이다.
On Press Perspective today, we take a look at the current geopolitical landscape amid hopes for constructive diplomacy among friends and foes in 2025. Do stay with us. Happy New Year. It's January 2nd here in Seoul and you're watching the first edition of Press Perspective for this year. I'm Min San-hee. Today we touch upon the potential foreign policies of our partners and regional neighbours as seen by members of the media as well as pundits here amid the start of the new year. For more on this, I have Kelly Kasulis-Cho with the Washington Post. Kelly, it's great to have you with us.
It's an honor to be here and Happy New Year.
Right, Kelly, Happy New Year. I also have Professor Im In-jung at Koongju National University joining us virtually. Professor Im, hope your year is off to a good start.
Thank you for having me and Happy New Year too.
Right. Kelly, we'll start with you. Now, many pundits are forecasting a tangible shift in U.S. foreign policy under a second Trump administration. That being said, Kelly, what have you been hearing on the ground?
Yeah, there's definitely a feeling of uncertainty going into Inauguration Day on the subject of foreign policy, if not many other areas of the Trump administration, in part because what we saw during Trump's presidency last time around was that he can be a little bit of a wild card and he can certainly break from convention. If you just look at what he did with North Korea, meeting leader Kim Jong-un 3 times after delivering some really escalatory bluster. That in itself is a good example that's local to Korea of how he can break from tradition a little bit. But also a lot of analysts and pundits are looking at his messaging, and that is also kind of sowing an environment of uncertainty and concern. Trump has challenged the NATO partnership, at least verbally, in such a way that many European leaders have begun to question whether they need their own security pact, or they've begun hosting talks on how to be more self-reliant. Trump has also, threatened to increase tariffs on the U.S.'s 2 biggest trade partners, Mexico and Canada, by about 25%, as well as an additional 10% tariff on China, which is the United States' 3rd largest trade partner. And then there's a lot of skepticism from Trump about U.S. support of Ukraine and the current war with Russia. And certainly President-elect Trump has been criticized many times and has been kind of portrayed as this Putin-friendly character in politics. So it's really unclear what's going to happen in terms of foreign policy out of the White House.
Right. Now, Professor Im, Mr. Trump, speaking about, of course, Ukraine and Russia, Mr. Trump had earlier pledged to end the war in Ukraine in 1 day. Regardless of the length of that effort, Professor Im, many here believe the proposal he makes will provide us with a barometer, if you will, about his future diplomatic endeavors. Do you agree?
Well, Mr. Trump is certainly his pretty non-traditional type of leadership he has shown, because he has been very much transactional, and his approach regarding any foreign affairs was pretty much deal-oriented rather than ideological, or rather than more like American value idealism oriented. So in that sense, Russia can be, strategically speaking, a more cooperative partner, because now U.S.'s #1 priority is definitely, needless to say, is China. Of course, we can record the era of Cold War many decades ago. Back then, of course, Soviet, the United States, these were the 2 main competitors, but their major competition was much more focusing on nuclear stockpile or nuclear arms capacity. However, these days, China's U.S.-China competition is very much multidimensional. It is surrounding so-called key critical future technologies such as AI or climate change related green technology or space technology. Of course, nuclear tension or nuclear arms race between the 2 is going more severe and severe. What I'm trying to say is, as long as Mr. Trump is prioritizing the competition with China, I think there can be more flexibility for the Washington Washington to deal with the Russia, of course, which can be a threat or a challenge for the European allies or even for the East Asian allies, including South Korea and Japan.
Right. And also on a somber note, Kelly, some believe the Trump administration may actually end up severing the communication channels that have been constructed between Washington and Beijing under the Biden administration. What do you suppose would be the broader implications of such a scenario?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say, unfortunately, the United States and China over the last few years have taken on an increasingly adversarial tone toward each other overall. And there is a sense of competition that's very clear from the White House and the State Department. So that's kind of the backdrop of what Trump is inheriting as he comes into the White House. Certainly, he's made no secret that he's not a particular fan of China or the current setup of U.S. trade with China, which I mentioned is America's third largest trade partner. And so the implications of a breakdown in communication, according to what I've read and what analysts have said, is really a fear that the global economy could break down. I mean, China certainly is an important trade partner for many countries around the world, including South Korea. There's also some concern that if communication continues to deteriorate, that there could be a misunderstanding between leaders that turns into a trade row or some sort of clash. Certainly what has happened in Hong Kong and China signaling over Taiwan is a source of tension as well with the United States. And so we're looking at potentially some regional instability as well as global instability if communication continues to break down. Now, it's not clear what Trump will do exactly because, as I mentioned, he is sort of a wild card and he even breaks from his own word sometime in dealing with foreign powers, as I mentioned, with what he did with North Korea, really ratcheting up tensions and then making the unprecedented move to meet with Kim Jong-un. So it's really unclear whether he's going to meet with the leader of China or whether he will try to engage once he's in office. But I mean, the implications are clear that a further deterioration of the relationship with China is not a good thing, probably globally or for the United States, at least according to analysts.
All right. And against this backdrop, Professor Im, what can Seoul do to ensure constructive ties with Beijing, do you think?
Yeah, as the other panelists, Kelly, already explained, Mr. Trump is pretty unpredictable, probably. However, probably within himself, he is trying to be sensical. Here, sensical means, again, that he absolutely prioritizes those pragmatic merits or benefits for the country, his country. Which means, again, even though U.S. is very severely competing with the China, especially surrounding the future technology I mentioned earlier. However, at the same time, for just ordinary American people's lives, again, the pretty affordable price imported goods, again, from China with the afforded price, that is pretty much, again, the important to sustain just ordinary people's life. So probably his so-called tariff war can be more incremental or even divided by the different category. For example, for the very routine, everyday consuming products, he might just not just raise the tariff so much, whereas he can put more higher tariff on the more strategically important products or goods. So we'll see what's going on. The thing is, Korea, of course, we have invested in China or in Vietnam, but or even in Mexico. But these countries are all some of the top of the list in which U.S. embraces trade deficit, which means again that Mr. Trump can be pretty much hawkish, not only just to China, but also to Vietnam, but also to the Mexico, which is, again, directly or indirectly related to South Korean companies' economic interest as well. So it is, again, very much challenging, but at the same time, when we think about the North Korean related issue, China's role, China's leverage, even though compared to before, it looks, it became weaker than before because now North Korea is very much close to the Russia rather than the China. However, still, China's role is critical and indispensable when we are trying to, again, to deal with North Korea. So, again, the South Korea also, our country, we need to be, again, the pragmatic as well, issue by issue approach. Again, the trade is trade, the North Korean issue is North Korean issue. So those kind of, again, very much pragmatic approach is necessary, I will argue.
Right. And speaking about North Korea, Kelly, Pyongyang, I believe, has vowed its toughest anti-US policy. What exactly has been said and what has been the response from the foreign media?
So my understanding is that North Korean state media basically said that it would enact its, quote, toughest counter strategy, but with respect to its long-term national interests and security. And as someone who used to look at North Korean state media every day, I can tell you that it's usually not very favorable in how it speaks about the United States. So it's hard to kind of read the tea leaves here, and it's always a question of how deeply one should interpret North Korean statements in state media. But the general analysis that I keep hearing about this is that it kind of sounds like North Korea is signaling that it's not going to follow the same playbook that Trump attempted in 2018, that more or less the door is closed a little bit to engagement with the United States and South Korea. And that's pretty much in line with how North Korea has been behaving since the COVID pandemic started. For those of you who don't remember, North Korea essentially in phases kicked out or allowed foreign diplomats and aid workers to leave North Korea as COVID kind of took a hold of the world and hasn't really let many people back in. It's been more opaque what's going on in North Korea than it has been in many, many years. And so there's this overall feeling that North Korea is kind of giving South Korea and the United States the cold shoulder. It didn't seem particularly interested in any form of dialogue. Its weapons testing has been ramping up a lot. And so I think maybe this is just a signal that it's not really as interested in the kind of unprecedented or, unconventional engagement that we saw in 2018 and on.
Right. And also staying here on the Korean Peninsula, Professor, there has been much speculation about the direction of future talks on nuclear weapons between the US and North Korea. In what direction do you believe will such dialogue flow, if they do, of course, indeed take place?
Again, as Kelly pointed out, the situation is very much different. Again, the 2018, pretty much, even though it was not that happy, rosy world, but still, compared to now, again, it was much more stable, which means, again, Mr. Trump was able to prioritize, focus on diplomacy with the North. However, now, again, the situation is completely, fundamentally different. The biggest issue is definitely the war in Ukraine. Again, this war is becoming, the total period is becoming the 3 years. It's dragged and then stalemate situations really ruined everyone. So definitely we need to fix this issue. And Mr. Trump also, I think he will prioritize this issue first compared to any other, because Middle East situation, of course, is bad. There are so many those, tragic scenes, and then again, I feel very, very painful too. However, again, compared to war in Ukraine, the situations in Middle East it looks like it can be, it can be more under control from, again, the Washington's point of view. Again, the war in Ukraine is definitely the most urgent issue. So if it focuses on that, again, now this issue is related to the Korean Peninsula as well, because again, the North Korea, they dispatched their soldier to Russia, and according to some information sources, it looks like they are even thinking to expand the dispatch of troops again to Russia. So having had all the situations, resuming the dialogue with the Pyongyang, it might not be that easy for a while. I'm not saying he's not, again, Mr. Trump is not interested in resuming dialogue, or he is, how would you say, has more like ignorant to the Pyongyang. However, again, I'm trying to emphasize the priority issue, and then as long as, again, North cannot be the #1 priority for now, it will take time. So I think we still need to pay full attention to what's really going on, especially in Europe first, and then definitely we need to again catch up with the changes.
Right, indeed. Meanwhile, Kelly, here in South Korea, the political turmoil continues. And given this reality, there are observers who are saying that the instability here, politically speaking, will serve to weaken stability in this Northeast Asia region. What more, Kelly, can you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, what happened in South Korea in terms of President Yoon's imposition of martial law and then his impeachment and everything that has happened since then was a big shock on the global stage. A lot of people in the foreign policy and foreign correspondence journalism world, if you will, have long talked about this sort of pivot to Asia in recent years in terms of saying that, the White House or U.S. foreign policy is increasingly looking at China and East Asia for its next strategic objectives. But then, of course, the war in Ukraine happened, and the rising Middle East conflict has happened and continues to escalate. And so I think there's a sense from analysts that, the United States and other Western democracies that are partnered closely with East Asian democracies like South Korea are really kind of relying on this part of the world to be consistent and stable while they deal with their more pressing issues of the Middle East and Ukraine. And that might not be happening given the impeachment of President Yoon, given the instability in the Philippines, the change of political winds in Japan, some political instability in Taiwan, and of course the adversarial relationship with China, which obviously we're not talking about as one of our East Asian democratic partners. But I think there's a sense that this part of the world is a little shaken. I don't know how unstable it's reading to the White House and elsewhere, but certainly the status quo has been rocked in recent weeks, and it's definitely a discussion going into President-elect Trump's inauguration.
Right, and also staying in this part of the world, Professor Im, Seoul and Tokyo are celebrating 60 years of diplomatic relations this year. That being said, how should these two neighbors work to keep their ties on track, Professor?
Well, the President Yoon's administration is probably the most, how would you say, kind of positive, of course, positive result of the Yoon administration was, again, the recovery from those pretty much conflictual relationship with the closest neighbor, which is, again, the Japan. So-called, this Korea-South Korea-Japan rapprochement, which was, again, led by President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida, his counterpart. That was again, the positive thing when we are thinking about all this rising tensions in the region, or very much multifaceted, complex tensions all around the world, because there's no room for Korea to fight over and over with, again, as physically closest neighbor, which is, again, the Japan, and not only just physically closest, again, the Japan, the system, even though they do have a Westminster system, whereas we do have a presidential system, but both are the democratic society, free market capitalism system. So as long as we share many things institutionally, again, it was positive, I will say, arguably. However, now because of all this political drama in this country, which is very unfortunate, and Japan too, even though their political turmoil is not as much as in Korea. However, the current sitting Prime Minister, Ishiba Shigeru, his political position is not that stable either. And they're gonna have the upper house election in the summer. So until then, again, his political calculation will be pretty much complicating too. So for the probably, even though which is very unfortunate, I think, for the first half of this year, it might not really be that easy to show something very how would you say, very ceremonial, again, to the rest of the world, even though 60th year is a very historic year. But however, in the longer term, I would remain more optimistic, because if you think about all this economic dependence and economic ties, human intellectual ties between the two society, human exchange or young generations, their cultural exchange, I think these two countries' relationship can be, in the longer term, can be more positive or more cooperative.
Right, hopefully, Professor Im. Kelly, you mentioned democracy earlier on and its state here in this part of the world. I understand its state over in France and Germany. It's also being tested. Keeping that in mind, an intriguing article by Reuters recently examined the state of democracy as we enter this new year. What appears to be the common assessment about the health of global democracy as we speak? And is there a role that South Korea can play?
Yeah, we've been talking for a while now about, the increasing rise of kind of populist far-right politics in Europe and elsewhere, even parts of Asia. I think there are some real concerns right now that the political winds are turning in a way that is not necessarily favorable to democracy. I believe it was Romania actually announced that they were going to have an election rerun because there were accusations of Russian political meddling in their election. Georgia is a very interesting country that I've been looking at for a while. They've been having protests over a foreign agents bill that was sort of, according to its opposition, modeled after a similar Russian bill that allows the government to crack down on free speech and small media organizations. They've also been protesting the suspension of talks to ascend into the EU. We see a lot of this going on. And then in terms of what Korea can provide, I think what happened in South Korea recently is very unfortunate, but the way that you look at it, it really depends on how you want to see it. You could see it as political instability, as a tragedy. You could see it as a testament to South Korean democracy that they were able to, end martial law so quickly, impeach the president, and now, keep moving despite all of these hurdles. I think one thing as an American and a Westerner that, we can take as a lesson from what happened in South Korea recently as we look at these challenges to democracy is that all of this seemed to happen in a fairly non-violent manner. I mean, the martial law basically bowed down to the political will of the public very quickly, who were also very politically active and able to protest in very short notice. And there wasn't much violence or any violence at all, really. And so I think the two lessons of kind of, honoring the public will and the public desire, but also being able to protest and affect political change in a non-violent way and in a way that is not met with violence by law enforcement as well. That's something that, it's a good achievement. It really is.
Right, a silver lining then to the brief imposition that is, of martial law. All right, Kelly, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Professor Im, as always, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow with a look at the economic landscape in the new year. Thank you for watching.
The Globalist shares inspiring stories of global